use it with property rights. The same thing as a piece of land out there. So you have to treat it as such and be prepared to protect it as such.
So what kinds of things out of industries that people would be working in right now, what sort of things what sort of commodities are issues that are things that people would seek protection for? So, for example, if you are starting out in a business, where or at what point would you want to seek protection, and how would you go about doing that?
Well, you have to remember, the way Copyright Act generally works is, you know, the protection is there the minute you start to write it down. There's no real formal process, it's just there. You have to first know exactly what your rights are as it relates to what copyright protection is all about. It's important for those persons who create them to know what they are, you know. And unless you know what those things are, then you're just walking around in darkness hoping that someone will help you, and that they're not going to help you. And so when we talk about the rights of copyright, the right to copy, the right to make derivative works based on it, the right to perform it, the right to visual display of those works, these are all broad general categories of protection, of rights actually that are owned exclusively by the copyright owner. And then once you realize that, oh, I have created this software or this app that runs on a smartphone,
right.
Nobody can make a copy of that, or no one can distribute it without my permission, because I deserve to have the financial reward from that. Mm-hmm. Then it's important for you to realize that, hey, I can be out there making a couple $100,000 if I know how to write code for an app, right. Or I know how to create a song or produce a song.
How difficult is that process to secure the copyright and?
Well, there's a formal way. Obviously, if you at the registrar department, there is a copyright office there that has all of the forms locally for you to fill out, to submit, so that you can have prima facie evidence of a claim to copyright in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, mm-hmm. similar to what they do at the Library of Congress and the Copyright Office there. So we have a similar provision here in our law, and it's operating currently.
Now, would you happen to know if that information is available to people who are working on a business plan? Let's say you're working on a business plan, you have an idea for a company, and you go to, say, the Bahamas Development Bank. Are they telling you that you need to do this? You need to go down to the registrar's office and fill out this form to copyright your ideas? I
would say that they probably don't know about that. But if you are entering the field of, well, any sort of business that's going to be based around IP, mm-hmm. It's important for you to understand, one, you need the right attorney, because everything that you're going to do is going to be based around the law aspect of it.
Right.
And when you approach something like the Bahamas Development Bank, say, listen, my company is going to be dedicated to becoming the next Cigna that's developing games for smartphones around the world, mm-hmm. and these are what my projections are. Most banks, they're going to look at your projections, your costs, and determine whether or not your business is feasible. Mm-hmm. But as the owner of that business, you have to realize that in order to protect yourself, you need to make sure from a copyright standpoint that all of those, especially if you, for example, if you are hiring, in the case of Cigna or app phone development, if you are hiring people to do so, mm-hmm. you need to make sure that you have all of the rights assigned to your companies, right. so that at the end of the day, your company becomes the copyright owner as to the persons that write code for you.
Now, see, the interesting thing about that is that there's an assumption there that you're going into this with that awareness. And I think many times, especially, let's say that you're a creative entrepreneur, you may go into it not thinking about all of that stuff.
But you have to.
You have to, but I'm saying that is why I'm asking whether or not, you know, you thought that say the Bahamas Development Bank or someplace that you would go to for assistance in writing a business plan, whether they would point you in that direction.
Well, I mean, that's there may be somebody there who understands that yes, you need to have those things in place.
Right.
But there may not be as well. it's important, like any business that you get into, that you have to know everything as much as you possibly can about it, or invariably you will be taken advantage of. You know, you'll be the artist who worked for a record company, stuck with a 7-year contract, making $5,000 a year, and it happens because you run into a situation not knowing the various variables that's happening around it.
How do you think that our creative industries have been impacted? And I'm including all sorts of intellectual property based industries. So I'm including architecture, I'm including engineering, things like that. How do you think that those industries have been impacted by our, let's say, lack of enforcement on both ends of IP law?
Well, I think our lack of enforcement only impacts the area of IP dealing with creative stuff. For example, when I say creative, I mean like music, movies, computer programs, those sorts of things where you have a lot of consumer demand for those. So the lack of enforcement always breeds a whole gray area in which people will try to get something for free. And that's generally a challenge, not just here in the Bahamas, but everywhere. You know, because if I can get it free, why pay for it?
Do you find Bahamians more receptive to protecting the copyright, the intellectual property of Bahamians as opposed to international?
Well, you can't look at it like that because there's a quid pro quo in our copyright law, and so if we don't protect other people's copyright law in our country, why would they protect our intellectual property in their country? And so you have to take intellectual property across the board, as it is. We have to take it all seriously, or we take none of it seriously.
Right. And we've been threatened before, have we?
Several times.
Because of the violations we have here.
Well, we have, and it will continue.